Hi, I'm Femi Okay.
And I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Today, is Guyana ready for an oil boom?
We'll talk about the potential impact a brand new oil industry could have on the country.
Oil companies have identified massive offshore reserves in Guyana, one of South America's poorest nations. New estimates from last week report that more than 4 billion barrels of oil could be extracted from a region known as the Stabroek block, where ExxonMobil expects to start pumping crude from 2020.
The country is poised to become a major energy supplier, but not everyone is optimistic about the potential for oil revenue to benefit Guyanese citizens. So what can Guyana do to avoid becoming another poor yet resource-rich nation?
On Skype from Georgetown, Guyana, Christopher Ram, an attorney and columnist who's been writing about the government's handling of oil-related matters. Also in Georgetown, Imran Khan, Director of Public Information for the Guyanese government. In Houston, Texas, Jan Mangal, an advocate of good governance and a former petroleum advisor to President of Guyana, David Granger. And in New York, we have Lisa Sachs, Director of the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment. Hello, everybody. It's really good to see you. Imran, I am thinking, when people look back in, say, 50 years' time, are they going to say this discovery, this oil that Guyana has, the best thing that ever happened to the country? Thoughts?
We certainly are planning for that, and we're hoping so. As you know, Femi, you've mentioned it in the introduction to the program, that we've had a difficult time, and it is something that we acknowledge since independence just over 50 years ago. And we hope that this transformational oil find will correct some of the issues and challenges that we've had in the past. We're very cautious, and that has brought some criticism with regard to the pace at which we're implementing legislation and putting the structures and framework in place. But we want to ensure that we do it correctly, we do it right. We have voluntarily joined the extractive industries EITI international organization. We've also looked at the Sovereign Wealth Fund and the legislation for that. And we're ensuring that we are getting the best advice from global experts to ensure that this opportunity, this transformational opportunity for infrastructural, social, and economic change is not squandered.
Imran, can I jump in there a bit?
Yeah, Jan, go on. Imran's going to finish his sentence and finish his sentence by explaining the acronym ETI, and then Jan, you pick up. Go ahead.
Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, just to ensure that we have a strong framework that when the oil wealth comes in 2020 and onwards, after we would have gotten to first oil in that time, that we have every Guyanese benefiting and having an improved standard of life and quality of life as a result of this very, very transformational development.
Jan.
So what Imran says there, it's all good words, but when you look at what's happening on the ground, it's a different story. Imran mentioned the need for having experts. Well, actually, there are consultants coming and going, but there's zero oil and gas experts, people with 15 to 30 years plus experience on the ground, working full-time in decision-making roles in the government. And these would have to be foreigners. You won't find Guyanese or even Guyanese in the diaspora with the skills that Guyana needs. But unfortunately, there seems to be a reluctance, a huge reluctance on hiring in the required capacity, and that's unfortunate.
Well, if I could respond quickly,
Go ahead,
Jan, as you mentioned when in introducing him, he's the former advisor to President Granger on oil and gas, and certainly he has been engaged, and I'm certain that he will be engaged in the future as well. There have been a number of experts who have, at this point, been advising and been giving advice on a short-term basis. We've had internationally recognized experts, Sir Paul Collier, who has been in Guyana and who has briefed President Granger and his entire cabinet on issues that are critical to the development of this industry.
But I must come in here, Surian. I thought
these names are being
he came here for
thrown out.
one day.
Yeah.
Sorry.
These names are being thrown out, and that's what the government is very good at, is just throwing these names around. Where's the substance? Having a trip for one day is insufficient. We need people on the ground working there on long-term contracts, a year, 2 years. We have to spend $10 million now to save $1 billion in the future.
I
And the
agree with you,
government is
Jan
unwilling to
and
spend the
Chris.
10 million now to save $1 billion in the future.
I
So
would say
Jan
that
and
it
Imran,
is a
I'm going to pause you there because
certainly has
I
been a start.
hear where the disagreement is right there. I want to bring in our community who echo really both of your sentiments. So on one hand, you have Ravin here who says the reality is that while many expect Guyana to benefit significantly from employment opportunities, we just don't have the human resource capacity to provide the same. And making a point that Jan made earlier, Ravin says there are 0 trained oil and gas experts at the National Resource Ministry, which is responsible for managing the sector. On the other side, though, someone who might agree with you, Imran, is this tweet from William. He says there is already a bump in economic activity, primarily in Georgetown, from Exxon's activities here, and this can only increase. Young people especially have to think carefully of how they can position themselves for this oil sector and get the relevant education. There is no free money. So I want to bring Christopher in on that point, that this is exciting for some people. Where do you fall?
I think this is indeed a major moment for Guyana, but we've always been a richly endowed country with a very small population. So the per capita wealth in our resources is quite considerable. The point is this: 2 years before first oil, we just are not ready. We're talking about a sovereign wealth fund like if it's some legal instrument. I'm sorry, Imran, you have it completely wrong. And I know you work with the government and you have to say that. But a sovereign wealth fund is much more than a legal instrument.
Well, if I can jump in, and I acknowledge the anxieties and the concerns of both Jan and Chris. It certainly is a situation where and to put things in perspective, the Department of Energy is being set up. And when that is set up, we will have full-time experts with international experience, and we will have the best minds locally. They may not necessarily have international experts within.
2 years short of
I acknowledge the anxiety.
maybe...
It's an anxiety that the government has as well, but we want
Lisa,
to ensure
that
the structures are set up and they're set up properly and with the best international advice, including from the World Bank, the IDB, and Commonwealth.
Imran and Christopher, just take a pause for a moment. I just did a sort of double take where we have this new energy department that isn't set up quite yet, and oil extraction is expected to happen in 2020. Lisa, what did you want to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and actually build off some of the comments from the viewers. I think that there are 2 distinct components. One is getting the deal right and being able to manage the sector and negotiate with the international players, which is an enormous task. And I think that that's what this conversation has focused on to date. And certainly much more can and should be done there. But the benefits for the country are actually on the development side. And I don't think the country should either rely on the minimal number of jobs that might be created, even if there were capacity, which I agree with, the skills are not there. But the number of jobs created by these projects is relatively minimal. The economic linkages that one of the viewers mentioned are also not the bonanza that we are hoping for with an oil boom. What the country needs to be doing now and putting in place is a long-term development strategy. How does this oil boom fit into the long-term development plans and the development needs of Guyana? How is this going to help build health systems, energy systems, education
Lisa,
systems, infrastructure?
Can I share the president's vision on that?
Please.
Yep. So the president actually has a very clear vision on how this industry will help Guyana. And his vision is, and he understands the risks, his vision is all around that this is not a bonanza. This is for the children and grandchildren of Guyana. So he has a very, I would say, solid vision for the country. It is just in implementing that vision that we're seeing some stumbling blocks. And we have to recognize it's a coalition government and the politics involved. And it's not as, I think Guyanese think, oh, we can see strong leadership. You know, the president can make everything happen, but the president can't. And that is where make everything happen. And that's where Guyanese need to step in as well. Civil society is going to play a crucial role in this endeavor, and strong institutions. And unfortunately, those are things we don't really have in Guyana. We need to develop quickly.
Can I respond to Jan there, please? Jan, it's true civil society has to play a role. Civil society did not have a role in the kind of contract that was imposed on Guyana. We know in 2016, ExxonMobil said that they were not going to start spending until there was a replacement petroleum license and an agreement. We know as well, at the moment, we have no policy framework, we have no legislative framework, we now have no institutional framework, we now have no policy in relation to consumption and savings. We have a serious physical and social deficit. We can't only use the money we get from oil for future generations. What about current generation? And we have to consider, and I like what Lisa said, but where is our absorptive capacity? Can this country, at this moment, with next to zero human capacity and institutional capacity and legislative capacity, absorb the revenue from, say, 1 million barrels of oil per day? We should not be excited about those things. We should ask, is this consistent with the framework for our country? Or are we going to be introducing the Dutch disease? Are we going to be introducing the resource curse? Those are some of the dangers. And look, I'm a proud Guyanese, but I think we have serious problems and we have to confront them. I'm part of civil society. I may talk, but I never get listened to by those in the corridors of power.
If I can say, I have a lot less cynical.
I think people are listening now, and I hear you, Imran. I'll go to this next comment. I'll give it to you. This is from Zephyrin. And Zephyrin says, the voice of these 20 and 30 years old of age in Guyana, they're expressing their distrust in Exxon and the government providing any benefit to the country. They say they need jobs. The work is given to foreigners while the locals suffer. And the elders have witnessed corruption with oil around the world, so they're mistrustful as well, he seems to be saying. Imran, do you think that there is public trust in government to do what will be best for the people?
Chris mentioned that this, or Jan mentioned that this is a coalition government. And that is one of the major challenges that we have been working on, restoring public trust in government. We've had decades in the recent past where that trust, that public trust in government has been eroded because of the quality or lack thereof of governance that we've had. And that is one of the major challenges. And I agree with the anxiety that Chris shares, but I have a less cynical view. I am excited about the prospects for Guyana.
Cynical, they're realistic.
I think both Lisa and Jan have said that there are elements in government that are keen on ensuring that this opportunity is maximized for all Guyanese. What we've got to do is use the time between now and first oil to ensure, and Chris is right, all the structures are not in place. We acknowledge that. Would we have liked all the structures to be in place now? Absolutely. But we're working towards ensuring that when they are in place, and they will be in place before first oil, that they're solid, that they're strong, that they're transparent, and that they're inclusive. And there are concerns, as expressed by Chris and Jan, that young people are pondering and wondering and are uncertain as to how they'll be involved in all of this.
So, Guess, if I may, Lisa, I hear you. I just want to just add this in. Imran's explanation that there's a coalition government, so it's not all smooth sailing. Let me just explain very starkly what this means. President is in one party, ministers in another party. It makes it difficult for them to be on the same page. Also, a little bit earlier in the conversation, you would have heard about the Dutch disease. In the context of Guyana, Lisa, can you explain what that actually means for people who don't follow oil frontier countries?
Yeah, Dutch disease can be a really complicated concept, but to try to make it very simple and then to say that I think that it's easily avoidable. I mean, a very simple explanation of Dutch disease is the concern that overconsumption or putting a lot more money into the economy can create all sorts of problems with exchange rate distortions and crowding out other sectors, leading to negative, actually, economic outcomes as opposed to improved economic outcomes. That is a risk, but it is actually avoidable through many ways. And one way is not pouring consumption money into the economy, but actually investing in the basic infrastructure and the basic needs in an economy that allow other productive sectors to to flourish. So actually investing, building public investment programs, investing in the human capacity, investing in the infrastructure. That's not consumption.
But
that's
Lisa,
investment, and that can avoid. And by the way, just to say, I hear the concerns about the absorptive capacity. I enjoyed being in East Timor about 8 years ago when they were having many of these same discussions. East Timor has some similarities. Of course, every country has very different context, but East Timor is another relatively small post-conflict, actually in their case, island nation that had an oil bonanza, and they struggled with many of the same challenges, including, by the way, the international community saying you don't have the absorptive capacity right now to invest. Save all your money like Norway did, put all your money in an oil fund and don't spend it. And they actually did that. And to their credit, they built a really large petroleum fund. And that petroleum fund has now accumulated $16 billion, which is quite a lot as of at least a couple of years ago. But a couple of years ago, people were noticing, okay, we're saving all this money, but we still have high rates of malnutrition. We still don't have energy. We still don't have an education system. We still don't have good health care.
Lisa,
we have to invest in the current system. So yeah, but just to finish that one, can I just finish that one thought? That I think that what East Timor did, which is a useful model to follow, is that they have kept the strength of their investment fund, but are now investing more and more in the domestic economy, pushing that absorptive capacity and actually seeing some of the development benefits. Sorry, Jan.
So the odds are actually stacked against Guyana, and a lot of work is needed. I mean, and Imran puts a positive spin on it, and that's good. We need a positive spin, but we also need to recognize the risks, and unfortunately, enough people in government are not recognizing the risks. We have to recognize Exxon is not here to help Guyana. Exxon is here to make money. But we have people in government who are running around saying that Exxon is here to save Guyana. It's a completely wrong attitude. You know, Guyana did not negotiate well in a renegotiation that happened recently. Guyana negotiated with zero expertise. You know, they didn't bring in anyone to negotiate.
But Jan, didn't the minister of the government, who is one of the Quintet plus one, say that Guyana did not even negotiate? There were no negotiations to arrive at this contract. That's
there was. I'm
telling you what the minister said, and he's a member of the Quintet. I don't think it's fair
for Jan to say that you have ministers running around saying that Exxon is here to save Guyana. I don't think that is a view that has been promulgated in Guyana in any way. I do think that the government sees Exxon as a partner. We're very much aware of the risks, and that is why we're ensuring that we get the best international advice, including from Jan recently. And that is why, with regard to the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we are ensuring that there is incorporation of the Santiago Principles, and that we are working with the World Bank,
Jan,
with the IDB,
I think you were just, Jan, I think you were just given a compliment there. Imran, we hear you. We hear the positivity. We hear what you're trying to do. Let me just hear what the community is wanting to add to this conversation. Malika.
Well, there's a bit of positivity online as well. So this is on YouTube Live from someone watching, Michael, who's from Guyana. He says, this is fantastic news for us. I expect massive infrastructural projects, better hospitals, and much needed funding for education.
That's not what Lisa was saying just now.
Exactly, yes. There is a way to avoid the resource curse or the Dutch disease. This person would agree with that. But then when we talk about the risks, Jan mentioned that there are some risks. One that we're getting a lot from our community. This is Amina, who mentions the impact on the environment. You can tell she's watching this live because she includes a screenshot. It's that environment question that we've gotten from several people. I want to play a video comment from one of those people. She's actually the president of the Guyana Marine Conservation Society. And here's what she told the stream.
Our government has not done enough to hold ExxonMobil accountable in the event of an oil spill. It has allowed ExxonMobil to self-insure, which means that if our fisheries is devastated by an oil spill, ExxonMobil itself determines the level of compensation to our fishermen. The company has not had any meaningful consultations with the indigenous communities within and around our Shell Beach protected area on oil spill, nor have they conducted oil spill training. Our country is also yet to have a national oil spill contingency plan.
So, Imran, I'll give that to you. I know that government officials are on the record with denying what she says, but I'd like your take on that. And
in addition to denying the bulk of it, it's what Annette is saying it doesn't complete the picture. There are active programs that are engaged in ensuring that persons have oil spill training, and that there are consultations that are continuing nationwide. We haven't yet gotten to first oil, but we will be
Imran,
far
where is all
better
of this taking
prepared.
place? A lot of us don't know about these things.
They're happening. You would have to completely ignore the reports in the media, Chris. I can think of at least 2 instances within the past month that there have been extensive and comprehensive oil spill training. Just to finish the point, that a lot of training is happening in this regard. Consultations are continuing, and Guyanese are being engaged. And my sense, having traveled across Guyana.
Training of whom?
Most recently, there was training of the fisher folk in the Berbice area.
So
there were other training programs that were happening. All of the training, Chris, it is unrealistic to expect that all of the training can happen simultaneously. They have to happen in blocks, and they will happen incrementally, and we will ensure that more Guyanese are informed. There are also other initiatives that are taking place to ensure that
so you see a lot of these.
Imran and Chris and Jan. Imran, Chris and Jan. I need to add something in this conversation that we haven't really addressed, and I specifically, and the team specifically approached ExxonMobil. They said, "Can you come on the show?" They said, "We will send you a statement." And so this is the statement that we got from Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited. They actually sent us a long statement, but I want to show this a little bit to you because it's quite important about the renegotiation of a contract, the original contract from 1999. And they say ExxonMobil and its partners were comfortable continuing its operations in Guyana under the existing 1999 agreement. However, updating the agreement provided additional benefits to both parties. And then they sent us this from their Facebook page. And these are the difference between 1999 and the deal that is currently in place. There was no signing bonus back in 1999. There is now. The annual rental fee has gone up from $240,000 to $1 million.
Do you know what the signing bonus
the
is all
language
about?
in the contract has also changed. So I'm wondering, is this an indication that Guyana was ripped off at the beginning, and now you're trying to actually catch up and get a little bit more experience? Lisa, you're nodding your head.
Can I tell you this?
Yeah, Lisa, then Chris. Yeah, Lisa and Chris, and you can do it very quickly because we don't have much time. Lisa, you go first. Chris, you go second. Lisa, go ahead.
The circumstances have changed entirely from 1999 to 2016. In 1999, there was exploration. It was unknown what the quality of the resource was. In 2016, we knew, and so it's disingenuous of Exxon, frankly, to make that comparison. What we should be looking at is whether the deal in 2016 is appropriate for the government. And it's widely acknowledged and widely agreed that it's not, that Guyana did not get a good deal. I would say, although somewhat controversial, that I wouldn't be afraid of having an honest conversation about whether this is a good deal and talking about how to rebalance the deal. Investors and frankly the media always make governments scared of approaching that. But there are dozens or hundreds of renegotiations or transformations in the resource sector around the world, in developed countries, in the UK, in Canada.
I hear you, Lisa. I'm going to push you a little bit because I've only got a minute left just to hear what Chris really wanted to get in there. Chris, go ahead, just very briefly in a sentence.
I want to say this. The 1999 agreement expired. They didn't have an option on that one. It expired under the law. I also want to say that, we talk about jobs. We have offshore, everything happens offshore. Exxon has said it's not bringing the oil to Guyana. Lisa will tell you, unless the oil comes to Guyana, there are very few jobs available. I will tell you that when it comes to transparency and accountability, I have publicly accused the oil companies of bordering of fraud, claiming pre-contract costs that do not accord with their books. So
without providing any evidence, I must say, but
that is not correct.
That
is not correct. The evidence
view
is in
that
my
Lisa says that
gentlemen,
it's a bad contractor.
So Imran and Christopher and Jan and Lisa, we thank you so much for giving us this insight into the conversations that are still going on about Guyana and its oil reserves, potential oil reserves. Malika, where do you want to leave us?
With this reminder from Clement on Facebook, who says, a factor many fail to consider is that there are 750,000 people here, which means that Guyana is set to have one of the highest rates of oil reserves and oil production per capita in the world. They now need to look to the government to create responsibility and favorable conditions.
Malika, I'm booking my ticket to Guyana. My life as a millionaire could begin soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Our conversation continues always online at AJ Stream on Twitter. See you soon.